Now, from the White House tonight is President Donald Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Let me pick up what I was just discussing with Lindsey Graham, and that is Ferguson happened under President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden. Same with Baltimore, Cambridge, all these other incidents. They didn't have any reforms. Criminal justice reform happened with you. Historically, black colleges funded more money for a longer period of time. That was you as well. And if I look at some of the other opportunity zones, that's also. And you're always under attack, but then you came out with these reforms. Let's talk about police reforms you announced yesterday.
Well, we did, and if you look at the previous administration, and frankly, many administrations, they did nothing on this, and we did criminal justice reform. We did tremendous opportunity. If you look at the opportunities we've given everybody, but the opportunity zones have been incredible. It's been one of the great things in terms of investment in areas and in terms of unemployment. It's been incredible. Before the Chinese plague came to us, the African-American, if you look at the African-American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, Asian unemployment, women, everything, we had the best unemployment numbers in the history of our country. We had almost 160 million people working. Nobody's been close. And now we're doing it again. You see the numbers coming back very strongly. But you're right. The previous administration did nothing.
I talked a lot. For 3 years, we did an investigation, and we've been proven right every step of the way on what Joe DeGeneres kind of shocked me the first time. He said, dirty cops, because I have a lot of family members that were in law enforcement, including my own parents in some form. And, you know, I always said the 99%. I have an FBI button on me I wear every night. I have a CIA button for the good people of intelligence. You talked about the good cops. You know, there's a report tonight in Atlanta that the department is experiencing a higher than usual number of call-outs for the upcoming shift tonight. You've heard of the term blue flu. I opened the show with, well, who are you going to call if we defund the police or eliminate the police? That seems to be getting momentum in the country. That scares me. I'd like to know your feelings on it.
Well, Joe was referring, when he said dirty cops, I believe, to James Comey, and he was right about that one, and McCabe and that group. So he was referring to them, but, you know, it's a different form. It's a different uniform. And, you know, you have bad and you have great. You have cops and police and law enforcement. They're great people, and that's a vast, vast majority of them. And they do an incredible job, and they keep us all safe. And they love their country, and they don't want to make any mistakes. But they're under siege. There's no question about that. And we worked on some things very closely with law enforcement, and a lot of it you had on your show. I noticed the other night you had it on your show. And whether it's the cams, you know, the dash cam and the body cam, which is a camera, basically, very sophisticated camera, and other things. We have a lot of that in the bill, and it passed, and it's going to pay. A lot of things are happening right now, but I signed an executive order, and a lot of that is included in what the Republicans put out today. And the Democrats, all they do is complain. You know, they complain, but they've done nothing. They do nothing. They want to defund, and they want to abolish. They want to abolish police departments, and that's what's going to be. You know, with Biden, if you look, if he ever got in, you'd be abolishing police. You could just watch, because he's not going to be running anything. People around him will, and they will be abolishing police. They'll be getting rid of your Second Amendment very quickly. You will not have a Second Amendment, and many other things you won't have that you'd like to have.
You know, we're watching what's unfolding in Seattle, Mr. President, the autonomous zone, Chaz, Chops, the summer of love, as the mayor refers to it, potluck spaghetti dinners. You have offered help to every governor that needs it, every mayor that needs it. They have outright rejected it in states like New York, cities like New York, states like Illinois, cities like Chicago, and that includes Seattle, where, you know, city blocks now have been taken over. And by the way, they built their own version of a wall, interestingly enough, to keep people out. And you keep offering to help, and they keep rejecting that help. And it's really the governor and the mayor's job. But there might come a moment where you might not have an option. I assume we would know when that moment exists. Why do you think they keep rejecting your help? Because it seemed to work in Washington, D.C. and Minneapolis when they did accept it.
Because the governor of the state of Washington is weak and the mayor is weak. And what they're doing is setting a precedent that's never been set before in this country. And these people that are taking over this incredible piece of real estate are obviously very good at real estate, maybe better than I was, because they paid nothing. They just took it over. And the police are somehow told not to be there. I'm sure they'd do a good job if they were told to do a good job. I assume they're properly trained. But we would go in there if they want us in, and we will take it back very quickly. It should never be allowed to fester like it's festering right now. It's disgraceful to our country. It's a disgrace.
Let's talk a little bit about your reaction to the two big cases. It seemed to be universal condemnation as it relates to George Floyd, and your thoughts on what were the charges that went down in Atlanta earlier today.
Well, the George Floyd case, nothing has to be said. I watched that. I couldn't really watch it for that long a period of time. It was over 8 minutes, and who could watch that? But it doesn't get any more obvious or doesn't get any worse than that. And I think it's a different kind of a case. And that man has some big problems. There's no question about it, the police officer, what he did. And I haven't met any, because I deal with law enforcement all the time, and I just left a big group of the top sheriffs and law enforcement people in the country, and nobody was sticking up for what he did. The event that took place yesterday I thought it was a terrible situation, but you can't resist a police officer. And, you know, if you have a disagreement, you have to take it up after the fact. It was a very sad, very, very sad thing. And look, you take a look, it was out of control. The whole situation was out of control. I heard today and just got a report that the police officer's lawyer said that he heard a sound like a gun, like a gunshot, and he saw a flash in front of him. So that's an interesting, I don't know that I would have necessarily believed that, but I will tell you that's a very interesting thing, and maybe that's so. They're going to have to find out. It's up to justice right now. It's going to be up to justice. I hope he gets a fair shake, because police have not been treated fairly in our country. They have not been treated fairly. But, again, you can't resist a police officer like that, and they ended up in a very terrible disagreement, and look at the way it ended. Very bad, very bad.
You know, Terry McAuliffe, you talked about in your interview with my colleague and friend Harris Faulkner, you talked about Joe Biden almost having compassion on him a lot of ways. Terry McAuliffe actually said, I'm fine with him staying in the basement. He only sees 2 people a day as 2 body men. I'm fine with that, which I think is a very unusual and unique way to run for president of the United States. To me, I think there are legitimate questions as it relates to mental alertness and, well, let's say stamina and strength and acumen. I would argue just in the last 3+ years, your job is probably the hardest job in the world that I can see. I believe that to be true. Should that be an issue in the campaign?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting issue, and he's been in the basement for a long time. I think he's really been run beautifully. He's not running his campaign. People are running his campaign. I see quotes all the time that he said this, he said that about me. And they're long, beautiful, flowing sentences. I said, Joe didn't make that statement. And Joe doesn't even know the statement was made. But they are leaving him there, and at some point he's going to have to come out for air. And I think, look, we've done a great job. We've done a great job. If you look back a few months to an economy that was the greatest of all time, everything we had was at records. No matter whether it's unemployment, whether it's the stock market, and now you look at what we're doing. I'm doing it all over again. And we had to turn it off. We would have lost millions of people. We did. We turned it off, and now we've started up again. And we're going to have an amazing year next year. We're going to have a great third quarter. We just had the best jobs numbers, the biggest job gain in history, and we just had the biggest retail sales numbers in history for the last month. So we're starting up, and it's going to be very, very strong. We're very close to a vaccine, even with it, without it. But I will tell you, we're very close to a vaccine, and we're very close to therapeutics, really good therapeutics. And but even without that, I don't even like to talk about that because it's fading away. It's going to fade away. But having a vaccine would be really nice, and that's going to happen.
So all these protests have been going on for weeks, and talk about social distancing kind of went away almost completely from what I can tell. There were many people I saw that were not wearing masks, and even some of the politicians now that are critical of you having a rally in Oklahoma on Saturday. Now all of a sudden they're saying that it may not be safe. I understand temperatures are going to be taken. I understand people that go are signing a waiver. I understand that masks will be worn by people and even distributed. I think I read somewhere. Maybe you should change the name of the rally and call it a protest, and maybe they will say it's okay then.
Yeah. Well, that's true. The protests, I mean, the protesters and anarchists and terrorists and looters and all of the people that were marching on various locations over the last couple of weeks, that's died down. They've lost some energy. That's good. But because many of them don't even know what they're protesting, frankly. But you look at that, and they were right on top of each other, large numbers, pretty large numbers, and they were right on top of each other. And nobody complained. When you look at fake CNN, it's total fake. It's a fake news operation. And it's really like an extension of the Democrat Party. And then you look at MSDNC, which is DNC, Democrat National Committee, and you look at it, and you see the way they talk. They never mention that. They don't talk about it. This is all you hear about Oklahoma, what we're doing. We'll be in Tulsa. You have a great mayor and you have a great governor. Governor Stitt, I spoke to him yesterday. They're so excited about it that you have no idea. And we have had so many signups. You know, there are lines of people now, and we won't be there for 3 days. They have lines of people right now trying to get into the arena. I mean, they'll be there. They'll be early.
How many people
signed up? They'll be in one of those early front rows.
How many people signed up? Do you know?
Over 1 million people requested tickets. Well, there's just a hunger for the rallies, and I enjoy doing them, but they enjoy them more importantly than me. They enjoy them. It gives energy to everybody, and we have tremendous enthusiasm. If you look at the polls, we're way ahead of Sleepy Joe in terms of enthusiasm. We have enthusiasm like they've never seen before, actually, and Joe has the lowest, I hear, enthusiasm on record. Now, they have a party, and the party believes in a lot of bad things: open borders, sanctuary cities. Open borders, think of it. Supposing like at Tijuana, we're up to 212 miles of wall, and this is serious wall, and I'm going to be at the wall very soon. We're going to celebrate over 200, but it's 212 miles now. Nobody is getting through, and very, very few people are coming through on our border. We have a tremendous border, but think of it, in Tijuana, Tijuana, Mexico, it's one of the most infected places on earth, and we have a wall between Tijuana and San Diego. You know, it's like a beautiful, very powerful wall, and California is very happy that we have it because they wouldn't have any numbers. They would have numbers like you wouldn't believe right now if we didn't have that. So we've done a great job. We were very early to the call, as you know, because you're one person that reports it. But when we heard about it, I made the decision not to let people from China come in. We love people from China, but they were having a tremendous problem. And at the end of January, I said, you can't come in. You can't come in. And we saved tens of thousands, and everybody, even our critics, give me credit for that. But we saved tens of thousands of lives. And then I banned Europe from coming in because Europe, many of the people that couldn't come here went to Italy and they went to Spain and France. And we had to ban Europe, and we did that fairly shortly thereafter. So we've been very early, and our testing has been phenomenal. And we came up with ventilators that we're the kings of ventilators. We're making thousands of ventilators a week. All our people have one. Not one person that needed a ventilator has not gotten one. Every single person that needed a ventilator got one, and it's been incredible. Now we're helping other countries because it's hard to make. They're expensive and they're big and they're They're very highly complex, and we're helping other countries. Many other countries, we're sending them ventilators.
Let me ask you, it was 10 days after the first identified case of corona in the U.S. when you had the travel ban. We hadn't had a quarantine in 50-plus years, is my understanding. Then the subsequent travel bans, you were called racist, xenophobic, hysterical, fear-mongerer. That was 10 days after the first case here. I'm told, according to my sources, that everybody that was advising you didn't think it was necessary. The models were wrong. Predictions were wrong all the way around. I don't know why they've been so wrong. China lied. What made you at that moment make that one decision? Because that seems critical to me.
Well, I was seeing information that China, Wuhan in particular, was very heavily infected. And I just said, look, you know, why are we doing this? And let's see. And nobody knew anything about it at that time. We didn't know it affected the elderly much more so than children. That's why we have to open our schools in the fall. The children, the numbers are very, very small, almost non-existent. And it's an incredible thing. Their immune system is very strong. And so we have to get the schools open, and I'm sure they'll be open. I think most of them, if people are doing the right thing, they're going to be opening up schools. You have to have it. Too much of a strain in many ways and unfair to the children. But I just felt it was a heavily infected area, and how are we letting people into our country? Nobody knew that it was going to be that contagious. It's a highly contagious. There's been nothing like this since 1917, over 100 years ago, where probably anywhere from 50 to 100 million people died. Probably ended World War I because all the soldiers, they were so sick. And it probably... That was the one thing. It ended World War I, very likely. But nobody had any idea it was going to be this kind of contagious. It has been really rough. But we've learned a lot, and we're doing really great in the laboratories. And we're going to have a vaccine very soon.
John Bolton, who worked for you, has a book, and in that book, he's claiming that you asked China for help with your re-election. Your trade representative, by the way, the U.S. trade representative is now just came out with a statement claiming that that is false and denies it. There were just recently released documents tonight and affidavits that says the NSC has determined that the information in the manuscript is classified as confidential, secret, top secret levels. Accordingly, the publication release of the room where it happened would cause irreparable harm because the disclosure of instances of classified information in the manuscript reasonably could be expected to cause serious damage or exceptionally grave damage to the national security of the United States. I went back, I think it was a month before he was fired, and I have a whole series of articles. I don't have time for them all. In an interview with my former fellow colleague, Greta Van Susteren, Bolton said, I think one thing you could be sure of, this is just before he got fired, is President Trump's not going to make the mistakes of prior administrations here that succumb to the idea that if you give them economic benefits, you automatically count on them for following through with their commitments. He said on your views on Russia, the president gets criticized for being soft on Russia. I'm still waiting to see evidence of that. He's authorized us to take very strong action against election meddling by anybody, strong action against intrusions into our information technology systems by countries like Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. What is your reaction to this charge and this claim of the president, and what now the government is saying basically it's compromising national security is the way I interpret that?
Well, first of all, nobody has been tougher on Russia or China than I have. Nobody even close. China's paying us billions of dollars a year. They never gave us 10 cents, and Biden's son walked away with $1.5 billion to manage, making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on it. So nobody has been tough on China, and nobody has been tough on Russia like I have. And that's in the record books, and it's not even close. The last administration did nothing on either. And then in terms of Bolton, he broke the law. He was a washed-up guy. I gave him a chance. He couldn't get Senate confirmed, so I gave him a non-Senate confirmed position where I could just put him there, see how he worked. And I wasn't very enamored. He went into the Middle East. He was one of the big guns for let's go into Iraq, and that didn't work out too well, and I was against that a long time ago before I was ever even thinking about doing what I'm doing now. But he was one of the people who wanted to go into Iraq. When I asked him about it, I said, you know, about a month in, when he was about a month in, I said, what do you think? Do you think you made a mistake there? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I said, explain that one. So the terrible, terrible thing that he did. But he broke the law. Very simple. I mean, as much as it's going to be broken, this is highly classified. That's the highest stage. It's highly classified information. And he did not have approval. That's come out now very loud and very strong. And I appreciate Ambassador Lighthizer in front of a committee today on an unrelated topic. They asked him that question. One of our friends in the Democrat Party was very nice to ask him the question. And then he said, absolutely not. Trump was tough on China, but nobody's been tough like me. Nobody's been tough like me on China. We're taking in right now billions and billions of dollars from China. I gave a lot of it to the farmers because the farmers were targeted by China. Nobody's ever done that.
Wasn't it $500 billion for just 2 years alone, if I remember the first part of the deal? Not insignificant, and all the other trade deals. Let me go. One thing that kind of was interesting to me, everybody knows your opinion on the anthem and kneeling, and you've been very outspoken about it, but comments you made on Colin Kaepernick about if he deserves to play in the NFL, if he has the playing ability, if he, you know, and you're right, he did start off, by the way, as a great, great quarterback. I mean, actually amazing couple of years. You say didn't end up in terms of being as good a player in some of his later years, but you said he was terrific his first 2 years, and then he wasn't playing up to snuff. You said the answer is absolutely, I would, love to see him get another shot. And obviously he has to play well. If he can't, no, but you would like to see him get another shot. I found that interesting.
Yeah, if he has the ability. Look, he can only get it if he has the ability. They're not going to lose games because of, wanting to be politically correct or whatever term you might, I don't know if that's politically correct or the opposite. But if he has the ability, look, he was a great rookie, and his second year was great. And then after that, he started going downhill rather rapidly, and then he was out of football, and then he started suing everybody. And I think he made a lot more money doing that than he did with football. But it was if he has the ability, if somebody would take him. I think. Look, I know a lot of these owners. If they had somebody that was going to win games, they'll sign him. It doesn't matter who they are. They'll sign him. And I don't like also relatively another subject, but I figure it's your next question. When the national anthem plays and our flag, the great American flag, is raised, you should not be kneeling. You should be standing, ideally with your hand on your heart or saluting, but they should not be kneeling. They can protest enough. And I saw the NFL get very weak. I saw Drew Brees, who's a warrior, a great, great quarterback, a fan of his. I'm a fan of his. And I saw him make this beautiful statement, and then the next day he retracted the statement. He talked about his father and his grandfather fighting in the war for our country, our flag, and then the next day he retracted it. I just don't get that. But you have to stand when the flag goes up, and I think they'll lose a lot of fans and a lot of support in the NFL. It already happened before. I thought they learned their lesson, but I think it's going to happen again. And I was surprised at Roger Goodell that he would have done what he did and made the statement that he made. Nobody was even asking for it.
Let me go back to COVID and the economic recovery. You did mention, just like the coronavirus models, predictions, they were so off base. I mean, shockingly so. But with all of that said, and nobody predicted, they were predicting, I think it was a 9 million job loss in May, and you ended up gaining 2.5 million. Then you had a record retail sales at 18%. We see in a Gallup poll that you're doing better even now on this issue than Obama ever did at any point of his presidency. How worried are you about, well, we know it's when, not if, in terms of hotspots emerging, and we've now been dealing with them. How confident are you that we're able to get on them quick enough so that we don't ever find ourselves in a position again to have to shut down, a big portion of the economy in the country? And that would be, again, the cure can't be worse than the disease, right?
Well, we'll get on it. That's right. My original statement, the cure can't be worse than the disease itself. And we'll get on it quickly. We're working with 50 governors, some of whom are really outstanding, like in Oklahoma, as an example. We're working with the governors, and we're working with local representatives and mayors, and we're supplying them what they need, including the ventilators. Now we don't need any, no matter what. We have that taken care of. We're in great shape to put out I used to call them the embers, or the flames. They flare up in certain areas a little bit, but I think we'll put them out very quickly, and we won't be closing the country again. We won't have to do that. But at the beginning, I tell you, if we didn't do what we did, we made all the right moves, Sean, we would have lost anywhere from probably 1.5 minimum. Now, you have to understand, that's 10 times what we're talking about now, 10 times. Think of that. With all the loss, multiplied times 10, that's at a minimum. And you could have gone up to 3.5 or more million people, and that's many times more. So we closed it. We also learned a lot about it, who it attacks. It attacks different people, but it doesn't attack the young, as we said, but it does attack senior citizens, older people, especially if they have a problem with their heart, if they have diabetes. They get attacked violently by this horrible disease. China should have kept it where it was. They could have easily stopped it. They either lost control, they either suffered great incompetence, something happened, or, I don't know, the worst thing would be is if they knew this was going to happen, because other than just tonight, I heard, and yesterday, it hit Beijing to a certain extent, and we'll see what happens there. Just hit Beijing. But other than that, they've kept it inside, and, except when it came to letting it hit the rest of the world.
Only 139 days till Election Day. Reince Priebus was on the show the other night saying maybe you and Joe Biden, if he gets out of his basement, can have more than the usual 3 debates that a president would have. Would you like that, and or do you like it the way it is? Do you have any fear that Joe's going to try and duck him? We only have 30 seconds, sir.
Yeah, I would frankly like it. I can tell you who'd like it. His television would like it. Your companies would like it. But I would say that would be fine if they'd like to do it. I'm open to whatever they want to do, Sean. Get the word out. Mr. President,
thank you, sir, for being with us. We appreciate it. Really troubling times, but we'll get through it. We're Americans. Thank you, sir. All right.
Thank you very much, Sean.